Well, hey there, kiddos. I hope that you're having a really good weekend. We are going to talk about finding slope, and a lot of this is going to look very familiar to you. This is not the first time that you have done it, so I'm going to go pretty quickly through it. If you get stuck or I go too fast, pause it, rewind it, watch it again. But I do feel like this is something that I know you've seen before, last year's in 8th grade, or most of it anyway. So we're going to find slope several ways. The first way, we're going to find it from a graph. And if you remember, probably what you were told last year is that when you find slope from a graph, you want to locate two pretty points on the graph. So you want 2 points that have whole number coordinates. So like that point right there, the y-intercept right on the y-axis is definitely a pretty point. And then there's a pretty point right here. So we find 2 pretty points and then we connect them using a right triangle. And then we use our right triangle to calculate or to count the rise over the run, because when we're finding slope from a graph, that's what we're looking for. Now this first graph is a decreasing graph. It goes down from left to right, which means your slope is going to be negative. So let's go ahead and put the negative. That way we don't miss the sign. So the slope is negative. And so then we're going to count. It went down 1, 2. That's where the negative comes in. And then it goes over 1, 2, 3. So my rise is -2. My run is +3, so it becomes 2 over 3. -2/3 is my slope. So number 2, I have another line. I've got this pretty little horizontal line. I need 2 pretty points. I'm going to pick this one on the y-axis, then I'm going to pick one way over here. The only problem is, because these just go horizontal, I can't draw a right triangle. There's no way to draw a right triangle to connect those 2 points. So I can still, though, talk about my rise over my run. And if you notice, there's no rise at all. It doesn't go up and it doesn't go down. So I get to say that my rise is 0 and my run, because of where I picked my point, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could have picked any point. That number could be whatever. This simplifies to 0, so my slope is 0. All horizontal lines, no matter where they are on the graph, have a slope of 0 every single time, because they don't go up and they don't go down. They just stay flat. So now let's find slope given 2 points. Now this part might be a little new, I don't know. There is a formula that we can use to find the slope. The letter we use to represent slope is always going to be the letter M. The easiest way I know to tell you to remember that is that mountains have slopes, and mountain starts with the letter M. And so we use M for slope. And the way that we go about finding slope, if we have a we just have 2 points, is we use this formula. We do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so what we do is we find the difference between the y values and the difference between the x values, and that's going to be our slope. So if you look at number 5, this is your x1 and y1. This is your x2 and y2. It helps to label them. And so my slope is going to be subtract the y values. So my y values are 7 and 3, so I have to do 7 minus 3 over, and then I do my x values, 9 minus 2, and then I simplify that. Well, 7 minus 3 is 4, and 9 minus 2 is 7, and so the slope of my line is 4 over 7. So if I were to plot this on a graph, it means my rise would be 4 and my run would be 7. That's how that works. So then sometimes you end up with questions like number 7, and they say find the slope of this line. You'll notice I'm skipping around a lot. I told you I was going to go through this pretty quick. Number 7 gives you 3 points. It says find the slope of the line, and it gives you 3 points. Well, when you come across a problem like this, just pick 2 of the points and ignore the third one. So I'm going to ignore this point, and I'm just going to use the other 2. It doesn't matter. I can ignore any one of the ones I want, but I'm going to ignore that last point. I only need 2 points to find slope. So I'm going to do my y values. My y values are -2 and 8, so I have -2 minus 8. And my x values are -6 and 10, so I have -6 minus 10. And then I'm going to simplify that. -2 minus 8 is -10. -6 minus 10 is -16. Well, the 2 negatives cancel out, so it's going to become positive. And 10 over 16 will reduce to 5 over 8. So this would be the slope of my line. So we just use the formula, subtract the y's, subtract the x's, reduce what you can, and then you're done. Now I'm going to skip all the way down to 10 and 11 really quick, because I want to talk about how to find the slope from a table, which I'm pretty certain that y'all know how to do. slope from a table we find just like we have done before. It's using that formula, only you don't realize it. When we find the slope from a table, what we're looking for is the change in the y values over the change in the x values. And so how much did the y, that's what that little triangle means. It means change in. We want to find out how much did the y's change and how much did the x's change, and then we write it. It's just like rise over run. It's the same kind of thing. So here are my y values, and if it doesn't matter which two y values you pick, I'm going to use these two y values right here. My change between 1 and 5 is plus 4 because I have to add 4 to get there. You can check two other y values from 11 to 13. That's also plus 4. So the change in my y values is 4. The change in my x values, they've got to correspond. If I used 1 and 5 for my y values, then I have to use the 0 and the 2 as my x values because they have to match. I can't pick these two y values and then these two x values. They have to match. So from 0 to 2, that's plus 2. So the change in my x values is 2. And so I get 4 over 2, which will simplify down to 2. So the slope of my line for number 10 is 2, or 2 over 1, however you wanted to write that. So number 11, same kind of deal. We're going to do change in our y values. Again, it doesn't matter which two y values you pick, so I'm going to pick these two. From 8 to 4 is a change of minus 4 because the numbers are getting smaller. So my change in y over my change in x. My change in y is negative 4. My change in the corresponding x values is plus 6 because I'm going from 0 to 6, so I end up with 6. And if I simplify negative 4 over 6, I get negative 2 over 3. So the slope of this line is negative 2/3. So there is slope from a table, from a graph, and then from 2 points using the formula. So now let's go back to that formula that we learned that we went over a minute ago, and let's do this a different way. Now we're going to go backwards, and this is where I think this is going to become new for you. So what we're given is 2 points, 9r and 6,3, and I'm told the slope is negative 1/3. And I'm asked to find the value of r. So I need to know what number needs to go here so that my slope is negative 1/3. Well, I go back to that formula that we looked at a minute ago, where we did the y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And the first thing we're going to do is set that part up. We're going to subtract the y's and subtract the x's. Well, my y values are 3 and r, so I'm going to start with 3 minus r. And then my x values are 6 and 9, so I'm going to do 6 minus 9. And that has to equal my slope. Well, my slope, I've been told, is negative 1/3. So I've just taken and plugged in what I know into that equation. Now I'm going to simplify because I can do 6 minus 9. So I have 3 minus r over, well, 6 minus 9 is negative 3. It's still equal to negative 1/3. So now I have this problem that I need to solve. Well, the way I'm going to solve this to find out what this r equals is I'm going to treat this like a proportion, and I'm going to cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply this way. I'm going to do negative 3 times negative 1, which gives me positive 3. And then I'm going to cross multiply this way. And when I do this, this 3 has to get multiplied by both pieces of this numerator. I have to do 3 times 3 and 3 times r. So 3 times 3 makes 9. And 3 times r makes 3r. So this is what I end up with. And I now have an equation that I should know how to solve. So if I want to get this r by itself, I've got to cancel out this 9. Well, to cancel out that positive 9, I'm going to subtract 9. And so 3 minus 9 is negative 6. And then over here, I still have negative 3r left. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 3. And when I do, I get that r is equal to 2. So if I were to put 2 back in up here, if I were to make this a 2, and then I would check my math, 3 minus 2 is 1. 6 minus 9 is negative 3, so it takes care of the negative, so my slope is negative 1/3. So let's look at number 9 here. It works out it's going to work the same way. I'm going to plug in what I know into that formula. So I'm going to subtract my y's, which are r and 4. So I'm going to have r minus 4. And my x's are 8 and 3. So I have 8 minus 3. And it equals my slope, which is negative 3 over 4. So let's simplify. R minus 4 stays the same, but 8 minus 3 is 5. And I have negative 3 over 4. So now I cross multiply. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. And then when I cross multiply this way, I've got to do 4 times both parts. So 4 times r makes 4r. And then 4 times 4 makes 16. So here's my equation. I'm going to start by adding 16 to both sides so I can get r by itself. And when I do that, I get that 1 is equal to 4r. And then I'm going to divide by 4. And in this case, I get that r is equal to 1/4. And so if I were to plug that back in here, this point would be 8, 1/4. And if I were to put it in here, hopefully -3/4 would be the answer that I would come out to. So that's how, not hopefully, it would be. So I would plug that in to go do the math with my calculator, and you should get -3/4 as your slope. So this is just, you're going to take the formula, you're going to plug in what you know, and it's like working backwards. That's what it's asking. So that is finding slope. We'll practice this when you guys come to class tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your day.